On Friday, Kirkland Warren, the man charged with abducting and killing a Vancouver mother and daughter, went before a judge in Clark County to face a new allegation: rape of a child.
I'll get you, you coward. You's a sucker. You's a sucker. You's a sucker. You're a sucker. You're a child molester. You are a child molester.
March 22, 2023. A rural road near Washougal, Washington. A driver slows down, noticing something unusual at the bottom of a steep ravine. At first glance, they appear to be discarded mannequins, perhaps store displays tossed away illegally. But something doesn't feel right. The 911 call is hesitant. I'm not sure what I'm looking at, but I think you should send someone. When deputies arrive, the grim reality becomes clear. These aren't mannequins. They're the bodies of a woman and a small child, dumped like trash in this remote location, 10 days after they vanished. Their names were Meshay Melendez and Layla Stewart, a 27-year-old mother and her 7-year-old daughter. Just weeks earlier, Meshay had done everything society tells women in danger to do. She reported abuse. She obtained legal protection orders. She documented threats. She alerted authorities that her ex-boyfriend, Kirkland Warren, had fired shots into her apartment. She told them he was dangerous. She told them she was afraid. But the system that was supposed to protect her had other priorities. Despite Warren facing a separate murder charge in Arkansas. Yes, you heard that correctly. He walked free on bail in Washington state. Despite violating no-contact orders repeatedly, he remained on the streets. Despite Meshay's desperate pleas for help, the danger she faced was minimized, downplayed, and ultimately ignored. The morning of March 12th, witnesses saw Meshay slumped in the passenger seat of Warren's car, appearing unconscious. They watched as he placed little Layla in the vehicle and drove away. For 10 days, family members searched frantically. For 10 days, they begged for answers. For 10 days, a man with a history of violence moved freely through the community, while a mother and child lay dead in a ravine. The autopsy would later reveal horrors beyond imagination. Both Meshay and Layla had been shot in the head. The 7-year-old child had been sexually assaulted before her murder. This isn't just another tragic story of domestic violence. This is a case that exposes fatal flaws in how our justice system handles protective orders, bail decisions, and risk assessment. This is about a mother and daughter who did everything right, yet still ended up dead because multiple agencies, courts, and officials failed to connect obvious dots. The man who killed them should never have been free. The protection orders that were supposed to keep them safe were worth less than the paper they were printed on. The system designed to shield them instead left them completely exposed. If you've ever wondered how the system fails to protect those who need it most, stay with me. Like and subscribe to support stories that demand accountability. To understand how Meshay and Layla ended up in that ravine and why their deaths were entirely preventable, we need to go back and examine not just their lives, but the series of catastrophic failures that allowed a dangerous man to remain free despite every warning sign. Welcome to Dark Trace Crime Stories, where we examine cases that expose the darkest corners of our justice system. I'm your host, and today we're investigating a tragedy that should never have happened. If you believe victims deserve better protection, hit that like button now and subscribe to join our community fighting for accountability. Drop a comment letting me know what state you're watching from. I'm curious how protection orders are enforced where you live. The story you're about to hear will likely make you angry. It should. Because the deaths of this mother and her 7-year-old daughter weren't just crimes. They were systemic failures that continue to put countless other lives at risk today. Meshay Melendez was 27 years old, living in Vancouver, Washington, a city just across the Columbia River from Portland, Oregon. While public records don't reveal extensive details about her early life or education, those who knew her painted a consistent picture. Meshay was, above all else, a devoted mother. Her daughter, Layla Stewart, was just 7 years old, a bright-eyed child with an infectious smile who brought joy to everyone around her. Family members described Layla as confident, joyful, and the absolute center of her mother's world. The bond between them was immediately apparent to anyone who saw them together. "I am no longer a girl, Mom. I am no longer a grandmother," Meshay's mother, Nicole Norris, would later say in court, her voice breaking as she described the void left by their deaths. The statement revealed not just her personal anguish, but the tight-knit family structure that had surrounded Meshay and Layla. This support network extended beyond Meshay's mother. Layla's father, Javante Stewart, remained actively involved in his daughter's life. Aunts, including Lachey Gates, were close to both Meshay and Layla, creating a circle of love and protection around them. Meshay's life centered around creating normal childhood experiences for Layla, the simple milestones and memories that every parent hopes to share with their child. Birthday celebrations, school events, family gatherings. These were the moments that defined their relationship. "The 7 years was all I had," Layla's aunt would later say through tears, speaking of the memories that would never be expanded upon, the future milestones forever lost. In Vancouver, Meshay worked to build stability for herself and Layla. Their apartment was their sanctuary, a place where Layla could grow and thrive under her mother's watchful care. Meshay's protective instincts extended to practical preparations. She maintained what domestic violence advocates call a go bag, containing essential documents and necessities that would allow her to leave quickly if threatened. This precaution wasn't paranoia. It was a rational response to the growing danger in her life. By early 2023, Meshay had become entangled in a relationship with 28-year-old Kirkland Warren. What began as a romantic connection quickly revealed itself as something far more dangerous. Warren's presence in their lives would prove catastrophic, despite Meshay's increasing efforts to distance herself from him. The relationship had deteriorated into a cycle of abuse, with Warren's behavior becoming increasingly controlling and violent. By December 2022, the situation had escalated dramatically when Warren allegedly fired shots at Meshay's apartment building, a clear escalation from verbal and physical abuse to potentially lethal violence. This incident prompted Meshay to seek legal protection. She obtained a temporary protection order designating her as a protected person. She reported violations when they occurred. She did everything society tells victims of domestic violence to do. But as the weeks passed, it became increasingly clear that the legal protections Meshay secured on paper were not translating into actual safety in her daily life. Warren continued to contact her despite court orders prohibiting him from doing so. He called her from jail hours after no contact orders were issued. He remained a threatening presence that the system seemed unwilling or unable to control. As winter turned to spring in 2023, Meshay continued trying to navigate this dangerous reality while maintaining normalcy for Layla. She couldn't have known that time was running out for both of them. The most crucial fact about Kirkland Warren, the detail that should have prevented the entire tragedy, was largely unknown to Meshay when they first met. He was already facing a murder charge in Arkansas. In 2017, Warren had been charged with the fatal shooting of a man in Arkansas. Despite the severity of this charge, he was released on bond and somehow managed to relocate to Washington State. This catastrophic failure of interstate communication and monitoring would prove deadly for Meshay and Layla. Court records don't reveal exactly when or how Warren and Meshay first connected. What is documented, however, is the rapid deterioration of their relationship into a dangerous pattern of control and abuse. By late 2022, Warren's behavior had escalated from verbal intimidation to physical violence, following the classic progression that domestic violence experts identify as warning signs of potential homicide. December 2022 marked a critical turning point. According to police reports and court documents, Warren fired shots at Meshay's apartment building, a clear demonstration that his violence had reached potentially lethal levels. This incident prompted authorities in Vancouver to issue a temporary protection order designating Meshay as a protected person. Warren was arrested on multiple charges stemming from this incident, including domestic violence-related offenses and tampering with a witness. The latter charge suggests he had attempted to pressure Meshay into changing her story or dropping complaints against him, another red flag for escalating abuse. Despite the serious nature of these charges, and despite his pending murder case in Arkansas, Warren was granted bail. The amount was set at approximately $250,000, a sum that he managed to post, securing his release back into the community. What happened next demonstrates the fatal flaw in protection order systems nationwide. They rely almost entirely on the willingness of the subject to comply. Warren showed no such willingness. Within hours of a no-contact order being issued, he was already violating it, calling Meshay from jail. As weeks passed, Warren continued to violate the protection order with apparent impunity. Each violation represented not just a breach of court orders, but a missed opportunity for intervention, a chance for the system to recognize the danger and take meaningful action before it was too late. Advocates from organizations like YWCA Clark County later pointed out that Washington state had tools available that could have made a difference. The Tiffany Hill Act, named after another Vancouver mother killed by her estranged husband in 2019, allows courts to mandate GPS ankle monitors for domestic violence offenders. These devices can alert victims when their abuser is nearby. Yet despite Warren's history of violence, his pending murder charge in another state, and his documented violations of court orders, he was not placed under this type of monitoring. The protection order remained merely words on paper, with no meaningful enforcement mechanism. For Meshay, this meant living in constant fear, knowing that the legal protections she had sought were essentially meaningless. The system that promised to shield her and Layla had instead left them completely exposed to a man who had already demonstrated his capacity for violence. By March 2023, Warren's behavior suggested a man who believed himself beyond the reach of consequences. He continued to contact Meshay despite court orders. He moved freely through the community despite his violent history. And he began making preparations that, in hindsight, point to premeditation for what would come next. Have you or someone you know ever experienced a situation where protection orders weren't enforced? The gap between legal protection on paper and actual safety in reality affects thousands of victims across the country. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your experiences might help others recognize when the system is failing them before it's too late. The final chapter of Meshay and Layla's lives began on March 11, 2023. What happened over the next 24 hours would set in motion a desperate search by family members and eventually lead to a devastating discovery. On March 11th, Meshay Melendez, her 7-year-old daughter Layla Stewart, and Kirkland Warren were seen together at the home of an acquaintance in Vancouver's Springfield Meadows neighborhood. The exact nature of this gathering remains unclear, but witnesses later confirmed that all three were present at this location. The critical events unfolded in the early morning hours of March 12th. According to police reports based on witness statements, Warren and Meshay arrived at the same acquaintance's apartment at approximately 5 a.m. This timing, the pre-dawn hours when most people are asleep, would later raise questions about why they were moving around at such an unusual hour. What's particularly notable is that Layla was not with them at this point. The young girl had apparently stayed behind at the apartment while her mother and Warren went elsewhere. This separation of mother and daughter, while brief, was unusual given Meshay's protective nature. Around 8 a.m., witnesses at the apartment observed something deeply concerning. Meshay was seen slumped in the passenger seat of Warren's Dodge Charger, appearing to be unconscious or passed out. Her condition was concerning enough that witnesses later specifically mentioned it to investigators. What happened next would be the last time anyone saw Meshay and Layla alive. Warren returned to the apartment, took Layla, and placed her in the vehicle where her mother remained unresponsive in the front seat. He then drove away with both of them. This moment, a young child being placed in a car with her unconscious mother by a man with a history of violence, represents a critical missed opportunity for intervention. Had anyone recognized the danger and contacted authorities, the outcome might have been different. As the day progressed, Meshay and Layla simply vanished. No phone calls, no social media activity, no sightings. For a mother who maintained regular contact with family members, this sudden silence was immediately alarming. Family members began reaching out, first casually, and then with increasing urgency. Calls went straight to voicemail. Text messages remained unanswered. The hours stretched into days, with no word from either Meshay or Layla. The family's concern escalated when they discovered Meshay's car abandoned. Even more disturbing, when they went to her apartment for a welfare check, they found her dog inside, barking and clearly distressed. Meshay would never have willingly left her pet alone for an extended period. A missing persons report was filed, and the search began in earnest. Family members distributed flyers throughout Vancouver. They contacted Meshay's friends and acquaintances. They scoured social media for any clues about where she and Layla might be. Each passing day without contact deepened their fear that something terrible had happened. While the family searched desperately, Warren's behavior during this period revealed a man attempting to cover his tracks. Financial records would later show that he transferred money from Meshay's bank account into his own, a clear indication that he knew she would not be using those funds again. His digital footprint proved equally damning. Warren's internet search history, later recovered by investigators, showed queries about how to erase crime scene evidence. He researched cleaning products and techniques specifically designed to remove blood and DNA traces. Perhaps most telling, Warren reached out to friends asking for help hiding evidence. These communications, later recovered by police, suggested not just knowledge of a crime, but active efforts to conceal it. Despite these suspicious activities, Warren maintained a facade of normalcy. He continued his daily routines, interacted with others, and gave no outward indication of the horrors he had committed. When initially questioned about Meshay and Layla's whereabouts, he claimed ignorance, suggesting they might have gone to stay with friends or family. As the days passed with no sign of Meshay or Layla, authorities began to focus more intently on Warren. His history of violence against Meshay, combined with his suspicious behavior after their disappearance, made him the primary person of interest. On March 18th, 6 days after Meshay and Layla were last seen, police executed a search warrant at Warren's residence. He was arrested on multiple charges, including tampering with a witness and violating domestic violence orders, but not yet for murder. The evidence collected during this search, however, would soon paint a devastating picture of what had actually happened to the missing mother and daughter. The investigation into Meshay and Layla's disappearance began as a missing persons case, but quickly evolved as evidence pointed towards something far more sinister. On March 18th, 6 days after Meshay and Layla vanished, the evidence discovered from searching Warren's house transformed the case from a missing persons investigation to something much darker. Officers seized 2 vehicles, Warren's Dodge Charger and a Hyundai Palisade, along with several cell phones. The forensic examination of these items yielded critical evidence. Inside the Charger, investigators found blood in both the front and back seats. They also recovered shell casings from a .22 caliber weapon, a detail that would later prove significant. Perhaps most damning, police found children's clothing in the vehicle that matched what Layla had been wearing when she disappeared on March 12th. They also recovered Meshay's purse containing her identification, items she would never willingly leave behind. Based on this evidence, Warren was arrested, though initially only on charges related to witness tampering and violating domestic violence orders. He remained in custody as the search for Meshay and Layla intensified. For 10 days, the whereabouts of the mother and daughter remained unknown. Then, on March 22, 2023, a breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A passerby contacted 911 after spotting what they initially thought were mannequins lying in a ravine near Washougal, Washington, a rural area about 20 miles east of Vancouver. The caller's confusion was understandable. The human mind often resists processing scenes of extreme violence, initially interpreting them as something more benign. When deputies from the Clark County Sheriff's Office arrived at the location, they confirmed the grim reality. The bodies weren't mannequins, but the remains of Meshay Melendez and her daughter Layla Stewart. The Clark County Medical Examiner's Office conducted autopsies that revealed the horrific details of their final moments. Layla had sustained 2 gunshot wounds to the head from a small caliber weapon, consistent with the .22 caliber shell casings found in Warren's car. Meshay had been shot once in the left temple with the same weapon. The examination revealed something even more horrifying. Layla's body was found partially unclothed below the waist, raising immediate concerns about sexual assault. Forensic testing confirmed these fears, detecting Warren's semen on the child's body. This evidence would later lead to an additional charge of first-degree child molestation. The evidence connecting Warren to the murders was overwhelming. Beyond the forensic findings in his vehicle and on the victims, investigators uncovered digital evidence showing his movements on March 12th and the days following. Cell phone data placed him in the vicinity of where the bodies were discovered. His financial transactions and internet searches demonstrated consciousness of guilt and attempts to cover his tracks. With the discovery of Meshay and Layla's bodies and the mounting evidence against Warren, prosecutors moved to file murder charges. The case that began as a missing persons report had become a capital murder investigation, revealing not just the deaths of a mother and her child, but the complete failure of systems designed to protect them. The evidence told a clear story. Warren had violated his protection order, taken Meshay and Layla by force, sexually assaulted the child, murdered both victims with a .22 caliber weapon, and disposed of their bodies in a remote location, all while under court order to stay away from them. Following the discovery of Meshay and Layla's bodies, prosecutors moved swiftly to build their case against Kirkland Warren. Initially arrested for witness tampering and violating domestic violence orders, Warren now faced the most serious charges in Washington's criminal code. Prosecutors filed multiple charges against Warren: first-degree aggravated murder for Layla's death, second-degree murder for Meshay's death, and first-degree child molestation. The aggravated murder charge, the most serious under Washington law, reflected the particularly heinous nature of killing a child. The evidence against Warren was overwhelming. Prosecutors presented forensic findings from Warren's vehicles, including blood matching both victims, shell casings from the murder weapon, and Layla's clothing. They introduced digital evidence showing Warren's suspicious online searches about cleaning crime scenes and destroying evidence. Financial records demonstrated his transfer of money from Meshay's accounts after her death. Perhaps most damning was the DNA evidence confirming Warren had sexually assaulted 7-year-old Layla before killing her, an act of violence so unconscionable that it visibly affected even veteran courtroom personnel during proceedings. In September 2024, faced with the mountain of evidence against him, Warren entered guilty pleas. For Layla's death, he pleaded guilty to first-degree aggravated murder. For Meshay's death, he pleaded guilty to second-degree murder. Regarding the sexual assault of Layla, Warren entered what's known as an Alford plea to first-degree child molestation, legally accepting that prosecutors could prove the crime while not explicitly admitting to it. On October 8, 2024, Warren appeared for sentencing. Under Washington state law, first-degree aggravated murder carries a mandatory sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. The judge formally imposed this sentence, ensuring Warren would never again walk free. The sentencing hearing provided family members with their opportunity to address the court and confront the man who had destroyed their lives. Their victim impact statements revealed the immeasurable depth of their loss and grief. Layla's aunt, Lachey Gates, spoke through tears. "I can't even make any more memories. The 7 years was all I had, and it's all because of Kirkland Warren." Layla's father described the milestones his daughter would never reach: graduations, birthdays, wedding day, all stolen by Warren's actions. Perhaps most devastating was the statement from Meshay's mother, Nicole Norris, who told the court that the day she lost her daughter and granddaughter, she lost fundamental parts of her identity. I am no longer a girl mom. I am no longer a grandmother. While the life sentence represented legal justice, family members emphasized that no punishment could ever truly compensate for their loss. The legal proceedings brought accountability, but couldn't heal the wounds left by the murders. For domestic violence advocates who followed the case, the outcome represented a bittersweet victory. While Warren would spend the rest of his life in prison, the fundamental question remained: why wasn't he stopped before he could kill? The case highlighted how even the most severe punishment after the fact pales in comparison to prevention. A protection order properly enforced, bail appropriately denied, or monitoring correctly implemented might have saved 2 lives. Instead, the system could only offer punishment after irreparable harm had occurred. What changes do you think need to be made to better protect domestic violence victims? Are protection orders enough, or do we need fundamental reforms in how we handle these cases? Let me know in the comments below. Your insights might help others recognize when the system is failing them or someone they love. In the aftermath of Meshay and Layla's murders, the Vancouver community came together to honor their memory and channel grief into action. Candlelight vigils drew hundreds of mourners, many of whom had never met the mother and daughter, but felt compelled to stand in solidarity with their family. Makeshift memorials appeared near their apartment and at the site where their bodies were discovered. Teddy bears, flowers, and handwritten notes expressed not just sorrow, but outrage that the system had failed them so completely. Meshay did everything right, read one note left at a memorial. The system did everything wrong. For Meshay's mother, Nicole Norris, and Layla's father, Javante Stewart, the path forward has been unimaginably difficult. They've chosen to honor Meshay and Layla by speaking out about the systemic failures that led to their deaths and advocating for reforms that might protect others. Their advocacy has been amplified by organizations like YWCA Clark County and the National Women's Coalition Against Violence and Exploitation, which have used this case to illustrate the deadly consequences when protection orders go unenforced and warning signs are ignored. In the wake of murders, local officials faced difficult questions about how a man with Warren's violent history could have remained free despite multiple red flags. While no single policy change can be directly attributed to this case, the intense scrutiny has prompted reviews of how domestic violence cases are handled in Clark County and throughout Washington state. The true legacy of Meshay and Layla lies not just in these policy discussions, but in the lives they touched during their time. Friends and family remember Meshay's devotion as a mother and her determination to create a safe, loving environment for Layla despite the challenges she faced. They remember Layla's bright smile, her confidence, and the joy she brought to everyone around her. Their story reminds us that behind every domestic violence statistic are real people with hopes, dreams, and futures that deserve protection. It challenges us to recognize that protection orders and legal mechanisms are only effective when backed by enforcement, monitoring, and a genuine commitment to victim safety. As we conclude this examination of their case, we're left with a profound question. How many more Meshays and Laylas will we lose before we commit to the systemic changes needed to protect vulnerable victims? If this story moved you, please like this video, share it to raise awareness, and subscribe to Dark Trace Crime Stories. Your engagement helps ensure these critical issues reach a wider audience. Together, we can honor Meshay and Layla's memory by demanding better protection for those at risk and holding systems accountable when they fail.